Episode number 79 of Making the Case. While most men just talk, very few men build. Let's get it. Hey, what up? Welcome back to another episode of Making the Case, episode number 79. I am your host, none other than Dr. Jacob Isom, educator, author, speaker, entrepreneur, content creator, consultant, father, a little bit of everything. All right. So, today's episode, we're talking about how most men just talk, very few men build. All right. Before we get into, of course, our opening statement, we got to go over our two channel norms. One, we'll take points in our people. And then two, we don't do all the cussing and derogatory stuff. We're professional over here. All right. So let me give you my rationale or my viewpoint of what I mean when I say most men talk, very few men build. Right. So we like to generalize things all the time, right? Particularly when it comes to dating, particularly when it comes to men and women, when it comes to race, etc. Right now, we understand that that's just the nature of how our brain operates, and that's just how socially how we kind of construct ourselves as well, right? And there's nothing wrong with generalizations and nothing wrong with stereotypes, particularly when we get ourselves in trouble, when we try to kind of broadly say that, okay, this is how this person is because of X, Y, and Z. Okay. So a lot of times we like to blame men for all the catastrophe, all the negative things that men have done historically. Right. So we'll say that all men are misogynists. We'll say that all men hate women, or all men do this and that and the third. And what I'm here to tell you is that no, it's actually not even most. It's a very select few men that have a certain mindset or who are either responsible for dictating what goes on in our country, our society, and hell, even the world for that matter, right? We've all heard of Illuminati, we all heard of the Town of the 10th, we've all heard of secret societies, right? But even when we look at those organizations or secret society or what have you, they're only a small percentage of the population, right? Most men are struggling, right? Whether that's financially, emotionally, mentally, right? We know that when it comes to homeless, most of those are men. When it comes to most people in jail, most of those are men. Like, and we could just keep going down the line when it comes to the dysfunctional aspects of our society, right? So when we look at infrastructure and we look at how things are ran politically or anything like that, there's a small percentage of man that has their hands on the levers. All right. So for us to say that most men have this type of thinking, or most men are actually producers, right? Or most men are responsible for building infrastructure, that's totally not the case. All right. It's a very few select men. Even when we look at scientifically, anything like that, like there's a very few select amount of geniuses, people who are groundbreakers that are responsible for moving society and things forward. Right? Most men are hardworking men. Right? It's not that they're not working; it's just that they're working your average jobs. Right? Your garbage man, your any other job that is foundational to society, but yet it moves the needle very little as it relates to politics and things of that nature. Right. So when I'm speaking of uh, men who have their kind of hands on the lever, we're talking about people who are trendsetters. We're talking about people who get the blame for capitalism and things of that nature. Right. That's a select group of men. Right. We're talking about your uber successful as in terms of wealth, um, because we know understand that wealth equals power and things of that nature, right? And influence. Okay. Now we know nowadays when we talk about the social media space, YouTube and stuff like that. We talk about influencers, right? But let's not get it twisted, right? Even myself as a small channel, right? I have a minuscule amount of influence, right? You can listen to me and my points, but at the end of the day, you're gonna live your day-to-day life, and I'm not really gonna come up in the conversation. Now, my hopes is to present certain perspectives and viewpoints to you to have you think and maybe, change, how you move. Now, that's my hope, but at the end of the day, who knows if that's going to be true. Okay. So for today's episode, what we're going to do is I'm going to make my case and show you how most men just talk, man. Now they're more, say, idealistic, right? They want to do certain things, but there's only a small select group of men that's really movers and shakers and doing things that is really gonna push the culture and society forward. All right. And there's a couple different reasons for that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna give into some pieces of evidence to kind of speak to that. So without further ado, let's get into our first piece of evidence, shall we?
Well, in what sense is our society male dominated?
The fact that the vast majority of wealth is owned by men, the vast majority of capital is owned by men. Women do more unpaid labor.
A very tiny proportion of men, and a huge proportion of people who are seriously disaffected are men. Most people in prison are men. Most people who are on the street are men. Most victims of violent crime are men. Most people who commit suicide are men. Most people who die in wars are men. People who do worse in school are men. It's like, where's the dominance here precisely? What you're doing is you're taking a tiny substrata of hyper successful men and using that to represent the entire structure of Western society. There's nothing about that that's vaguely appropriate. Well, in what sense?
So that was my first piece of evidence. And of course, I'm a big George Peterson fan. I think he is an intellectual that has a very different perspective than most. I don't 100% agree with everything he says, but a lot of things he said he's be on the money with. And of course, I don't agree with 100% of anybody, but nor do I expect anybody to believe 100% of what I say. So, but he makes some great points because, and as I kind of touched on in the opening statement, is that a lot of times we'll allow and social media and just media in general plays a huge part of our thought process and how we look and think about things, because a lot of people are not critical thinkers. A lot of people don't do their own research. And so most people are going to believe what other people tell them, right? And there's a lot of women and even men, for that fact, that believe that, well, this is a patriarchal society, men run things, and we're fighting against the patriarchy and things of that nature. But when you really break it down and look at it, yes, there are a subset of men, as I was saying, that are responsible for a lot of things that we have nowadays, but we're not also looking at the fact that the effects of society when it comes to the dysfunction and the negative aspects, men are suffering more so than any other group when we just break it down, right? So we like to kind of glamorize and look at, well, we need this right and we need that, but we're also not looking at it like men are suffering out there. There's so many studies now that are showing how young men are struggling. I just saw some, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you probably saw this as well, about how Black boys' literacy rates are declining and stuff like that. So like when it comes to males suffer. Now, and you might say that male has all the advantages, but they actually suffer more as well. So it's kind of a give and take, right? So that was my first piece of evidence. Let's get into my second piece of evidence of why I say that most men just talk, very few men really run things. All right, let's get it.
But moving to silence is important. B-Ty, what you think about moving to silence? I think it's very vital because a lot of people announce their moves and want to talk about everything that they're doing, and then while that's happening, somebody's stealing ideas from them. Somebody jumping ahead of them, getting everything done that they've been talking about because all they doing is talking.
Okay.
Make more moves, less announcements. That's how it should be.
Right.
So I believe more people should do that. You know, every time you get ready to do something, you shouldn't have to announce it. I see a lot of people who do it all the time. They either post it on Instagram, Facebook, what they about to do. No, shut the hell up and just do it. Get it done.
Yeah.
Show the progress.
Facts. We're moving this out.
Notice silence is your biggest answer. Silence is your biggest thing that you need to have. It takes a lot to be silent. It takes a lot of self-control. It really does. But you can make yourself be in a lot more positive situations if you keep your mouth closed. You don't got to prove a point in certain situations. That's what people fail to realize. So many people be trying to prove a point. Be letting their words just make them want to prove a point versus remaining silent in situations. Let your actions prove points, not your words. A lot of bad things can happen if you let your words try and prove a point. A lot of bad things happen to people because they don't remain silent, especially when they beefing. When you get older, silence is your biggest.
All right, so that was my second piece of evidence of why I say most men just talk, very few men do. And now I believe that men are supposed to be the producers, the creators, and that has been bore out throughout history, right? When you look at most men being the inventors, most men being the scientific movers and shakers and things of that nature, but it still goes to the point where that's a sliver amount of the population when it comes to men, right? Most men are just going to talk, right? So, and particularly nowadays where everybody and their mama can have a podcast, everybody and their mama can have a microphone in front of them, right? Or they have a smartphone where they can get on and just start talking, right? Very few men are out here producing and creating, right? So if you look at most people who got YouTube channel, how many people get books? How many people who have things that they actually created? You know what I mean? Like whether that's merchandise or anything, right? Most men are not producing or creating, right? They're not moving the needle. Okay. They're just talking. Okay. Now, depending on how you look at it, you can always say, well, historically speaking, that has always been the case and probably will always be the case moving forward, which probably is true. But don't get it twisted because a lot of time we like to blame all men and have that blanket statement and saying all men is this and all men is that. There's an average for a reason, right? Most men are average just like most women are average, right? There's a small set at the bottom and there's a small set at the top. What I'm referring to, that small set at the top, is the one where you need to be saying, hey, this is the reason why things are the way they are. Everybody else are just followers, right? Most people are followers at the end of the day. Most people are not thought leaders. Most people are not thought provokers, right? Most people are not influencers. So at the end of the day, we're only talking about a small subset of men, right? That are the movers and the shakers. Most people are going to be talking. You have friends that just talk, right? They're saying they're going to do this, they're going to do that, and they never put it into action plans, right? Because they don't plan. Now, could they? Is it a possibility? Yes. But that takes work and it's hard. A lot of people don't like hard stuff, okay? Because what goes along with hard stuff is sacrifice, it's time. It takes a long time to get successful and to really hone your craft. And most people are not willing to do that. And what I should say, most people, and what I mean is most men are. All right. We have a title great for a reason, right? We got A, B, C, D for a reason. Most people are C students. Most people are C people. Okay. Most people are average people, and there's nothing wrong with average. I already did a video on that, right? But what I'm saying is, if you're going to have animosity and blame, don't blame most men, right? Let most men be. Average people can still be great fathers. They can still be great human beings. But at the end of the day, most men are going to talk. They're not really out here, and they're not supposed to be, right? All men are not out, shouldn't be producers and creators, right? It just kind of is what it is. All right. Let's get into our final piece of evidence and wrap this episode on up. Let's do it.
Most men walk the earth with this lone wolf mentality, right? We view the lone wolf as strong, right? The lone wolf is strong. He can handle everything on his own. I think if most men really understood what happens to the lone wolf, because his fate isn't pretty, the lone wolf dies. The pack is strong because of the wolf, and the wolf is strong because of the pack. Most men are living this quiet life of desperation and isolation where we're surrounded physically by other men, but mentally and emotionally and through conversation and learning, we don't have those iron sharpen iron relationships. We have like these more rusty relationships. So the Alliance, it's a community we've had since 2016.
All right, that was my third piece of evidence, and I want to leave off with that because I think that is the biggest reason why most men are just talkers and not doers. Is because they have that lone wolf mentality. And I'll be honest with you, for a while, I feel like I did have that until I understand in order to really be successful and really to, become someone that is actionable, that you have to create alliances, right? So as I mentioned before, when it comes to secret societies or when it comes to men who actually are out there producing and doing things, they join a community. We can look at fraternities, secret societies, politics, you name it, right? Successful men understand that you don't become successful by yourself, right? You have to do it in the auspice of other great thinkers and other great leaders. So the men that's out there just talking, a lot of time, and unfortunately, we see it a lot of time in the American African community where that we don't have that camaraderie and that sense of unity in order to move forward, and that's on the men, right? Um, so in order to push anything forward, you want that unity amongst the men because the men, I believe, that are the producers and the creators and the one that are going to maintain order and standards and things of that nature. So you really need the men to be able to be unified front. And once again, that's not going to be 100% of people, right? But you need a certain percent of men to be able to kind of gather, rally around each other, and really create a standard for the women and the children, right? So, yes, when we look at society, the reason why society is the way it is, a big chunk of that is on men, right? Men unified and come together and creating those boundaries and those standards. And I'm just gonna be honest about that. So, but that was today's episode, man. Hopefully you got something from it. So I think naturally speaking, yes, most men are going to be talkers, and there's going to be very few men that's going to be really out here doing what they do, which lends itself into dating because yes, I think I did a video on this already, is that most men aren't leaders, right? Now, that doesn't mean they can't be quality men, right? But they're just not going to be the leader that maybe you may want them to be, or maybe that you may see, maybe you saw from your father, right? And you got to understand that sometimes it takes men a while to really get, because if he hasn't, once again, it goes back to that pack mentality, right? If he hasn't been around a pack of wolves, and I'm using a wolves analogy for men, if he hasn't been around men to show him and groom him how to be that leader, then it's going to take him a little while to actually get that on his own through experience, gaining that wisdom. So yes, we're in a situation where if we don't have that culture in that community that we're coming from, then it's going to be a little bit tougher. But we actually see that when it comes to women as well. So that's kind of how we are. So hopefully you're in a situation where you come from a community and a culture of men and women that is teaching you and showing you the ways of how to be a leader and how to be a follower. All right. So now we're going to wrap the episode on up. I just needed to get that out. Man, once again, I appreciate y'all for rocking with me. Hopefully now we back on track because we'll be dropping another episode tomorrow. So that'll get us back on track where we need to be. So, but as always, man, y'all already know y'all can find my links in the description. Send me any videos you'd like for me to kind of react to or respond to, and I can tie that into any episode I need to. But you know, follow your boy on Facebook, IG, and all that stuff. Links for my website be in the description. If you know you need a consultation, go to my website, RCD Consultancy, and you see what kind of services I offer. But yeah, man, I'm you, you are me. Love always, love return. Remember, the worst thing you can do is lie to yourself. And I believe we just made that case, baby. All right, deuces. One love.